Edward Carlyle was a self-made billionaire whose charisma and charm captivated the world. At 46, he was a tall man with a commanding presence, his ocean blue eyes a window to both his ambition and the secrets he guarded. His dark hair, streaked with silver, added a touch of wisdom to his youthful energy. Known for his philanthropy and adventurous spirit, Edward carried an air of untouchable perfection, though those closest to him whispered of shadows in his past. On the island he adored, his lifeless body became the centerpiece of a web of jealousy and betrayal. Detective Julian Ames, the investigator sent to unravel Edward's death, was a man of quiet intensity. Standing at 6 feet tall with sharp features and piercing gray eyes, he had an aura of understated authority. His dark hair, flecked with silver, and his rugged appearance belied the meticulous mind behind them. Ames had built his reputation on solving impossible cases, driven by a past he never spoke of. In Paradise, he became a storm cloud against the idyllic backdrop, cutting through deception with sharp wit and unrelenting determination. Detective Julian Ames arrives on Azure Cove, a luxurious private island in the Maldives, to investigate the mysterious death of Edward Carlyle, a high-profile billionaire found lifeless by his villa's infinity pool. The island, a picture of tropical serenity, contrasts sharply with the dark secrets Ames begins to uncover. He meets Lila Moreau, the resort's poised yet nervous manager, who leads him to the crime scene. Edward's body lies untouched, his serene expression at odds with the ominous ripples in the pool. Lila reveals that Edward's wife, Isabel, discovered the body and is too distraught to speak. Through initial interviews, Ames encounters a web of complex characters, including Isabel Carlyle, who oscillates between grief and a hint of concealed emotions, Daniel Grayson, Edward's bitter business partner, Elena Navarro, a glamorous actress rumored to be Edward's lover, and Victor Lang, the resort's enigmatic chef with a tense history with Edward. As night falls, Ames reflects on the day's events and the dark undercurrents flowing beneath the island's idyllic facade. He senses that each guest holds a piece of the puzzle, and the truth about Edward's death lies hidden amidst the jealousies, betrayals, and desires of this tropical paradise. Lila Moreau approached, her composure a thin veil over her anxiety. "Detective," she began, her voice low, "there's something I didn't tell you yesterday." Edward was having disagreements with Daniel Grayson. They had an argument the night before he died. Ames arched an eyebrow. "An argument about what?" "I'm not sure of the details," Lila replied, shifting uneasily. "But it was heated. I heard Edward say, 'You betrayed me for the last time.'" "I won't deny we argued," Daniel admitted, his voice sharp. "Edward was pushing me out of the resort project. After years of partnership, he wanted to go solo. It wasn't just business, it was personal. Personal enough to kill him." Ames asked, his tone even but probing. Daniel's eyes flashed with anger. "I don't have to answer that," he snapped. Then, softening, he added, "Look, Edward was brilliant but ruthless. He made enemies, detective. Don't assume I'm the only one with a motive." Ames turned his attention to Elena Navarro. "Elena," Ames began, his voice cutting through the tropical stillness, "you told me yesterday that jealousy can twist love. Were you speaking about Edward?" She smiled faintly, her gaze never leaving the water. "Edward was magnetic. Everyone who met him wanted something from him, money, power, validation. Even me. And what did you want?" She turned to him then, her expression unreadable. "Freedom. But I wasn't the only one who felt trapped in his orbit." That evening, Ames found himself in the kitchen, where Victor Lang was chopping vegetables with precision that bordered on aggression. "Victor," Ames began, "you said yesterday Edward was hard to please. Did that make you resent him?" Victor paused, the knife still in his hand. "Resent him," he said, his tone heavy. "No. But I knew what kind of man he was. Edward saw people as tools. When they stopped being useful, he threw them away. Maybe someone finally got tired of being discarded." "Did you?" Ames asked pointedly. Victor smirked, resuming his work. "If I'd killed him, detective, you'd know it by now." As the sun dipped below the horizon, Ames returned to his suite, piecing together the fragments of the day. The island, so beautiful and serene, had become a labyrinth of lies and fractured loyalties. He couldn't shake Lila's earlier words about betrayal, nor the bitterness in Daniel's tone, the sorrow in Elena's eyes, or the restrained fury in Victor's hands. Standing on his balcony, the ocean roaring beneath him, Ames whispered to himself, the waves may wash away footprints, but they can't erase the truth. Isabel Carlyle, her grief now laced with defiance. Ames found her in the villa's courtyard, dressed in muted tones that belied her sharp demeanor. Mrs. Carlyle, Ames started, his tone measured, your husband was admired by many, but admiration can breed jealousy. Did you ever feel unsafe in his world? Isabel turned her tear-streaked face toward him, her brown eyes darkened with bitterness. Unsafe, she echoed, her voice trembling. Edward had a way of making everyone feel insignificant. Even me. I loved him once, detective, but over time, he made it hard to remember why. Why didn't you share this before? Ames pressed. Because what good does it do now, she snapped, her voice rising. Do you think I don't already blame myself for not stopping what happened? Ames confronted Lila Moreau again. Her polished exterior had begun to fray, her hands trembling as she poured herself a cup of tea. You knew Edward better than most, Ames said, his voice cutting through the silence. You must have seen his enemies up close. Lila set the teacup down with a sharp clink. Enemies? No, detective. Edward made people feel replaceable. Even me. He could be kind, yes, but only when it served him. Ames leaned forward. And yet, you defended him to the staff. Why? Her eyes darted to the window, the ocean reflected in her gaze. Because I owed him everything, she whispered. Even when he didn't deserve it. The truth is coming, he murmured, his voice barely audible over the storm. And like the tide, it'll drown anyone who tries to stop it. In the shadows of Azure Cove, alliances shifted, motives deepened, and the island's beauty became a cruel mask for its treachery. Detective Julian Ames stood by the window of the lounge, his sharp eyes watching the tempest outside as he pieced together the fragments of the case. The first interrogation of the day was with Isabel Carlyle, now more composed yet guarded. She met Ames in the library, her slender fingers clasping a delicate teacup. Mrs. Carlyle, Ames began, your husband's death left a void, but it also left an inheritance. One that could shift power. Were you aware of how his assets would be distributed? Isabel's eyes narrowed. Is that your way of asking if I killed him for money? I'm asking because motives are often tied to gain, Ames replied evenly. She set the teacup down with a sharp click. Edward controlled everything, even in death. I wouldn't benefit as much as you think. Her voice softened, her vulnerability peeking through. And besides, I'd trade it all to have him back, to have what we used to be. In the kitchen, Victor Lang was furiously slicing vegetables, the rhythmic sound of the blade punctuating the tension. Ames leaned casually against the counter, his gray eyes fixed on the chef. Victor, he began, I've spoken to everyone, and your name keeps coming up. Tell me the truth, what did Edward do to you? Victor paused, the knife hovering over a cucumber. He ruined my career, he said bluntly. Years ago, before this resort, I trusted him. He promised me a stake in a restaurant we were opening. At the last second, he cut me out. So you had a reason to hate him, Ames pressed. Victor smirked bitterly. I hated him, sure. But if you're looking for his killer, you're wasting your time with me. Some wounds go too deep to waste on revenge. The storm quieted slightly by the time Ames sought out Elena Navarro. She was seated on the veranda, her emerald eyes scanning the restless ocean. Elena, Ames said, his voice low, you told me Edward made you feel trapped. What did he hold over you? She laughed bitterly. Edward had a way of making you feel special, like you were the center of his world. But it was an illusion. He knew secrets, mine, Daniel's, even Lila's. And he used them to keep us in line. What secrets? Ames pressed. Elena hesitated, her confidence faltering. He knew about a mistake I made early in my career. If it got out, it would ruin me. But I didn't kill him, detective. I just wanted to be free. By late afternoon, Ames finally turned his attention to Daniel Grayson. The business partner was pacing in his suite, his frustration barely concealed. Detective, I've told you everything I know, Daniel snapped. No, you've told me everything you want me to know, Ames countered. Edward's death benefits you more than anyone else. You inherit his stake in the resort. Daniel froze, his expression darkening. "That doesn't mean I killed him," he said slowly. "Doesn't it?" Ames challenged. "You were losing control of the partnership. Killing Edward might have been your only way to reclaim it." Daniel's jaw clenched. "You're digging in the wrong place, Ames. Edward had enemies everywhere. Focus on them." As the day ended, Ames retreated to the lounge, the storm outside matching the turmoil within his mind. Every suspect had a motive. Every suspect had a reason to want Edward gone. Yet, none seemed to have the resolve to commit murder, or so they claimed. He scribbled notes in his journal, muttering to himself, secrets, lies, and betrayals, but who had the courage to act? The storm lashed the windows, as if urging him to uncover the truth. Ames knew that with each passing moment, the answers were slipping further into the depths of Azure Cove's dark waters. In the early hours, Ames sat at his desk, piecing together the tangled web of lies. A note had been slipped under his door in the dead of night. It read, "Trust no one. The truth is closer than you think." Ames sought out Isabel Carlyle, finding her in the garden, her hands idly trailing over the dew-covered petals. Her grief seemed heavier, her beauty shadowed by guilt. "You've been quiet, Mrs. Carlyle," Ames said, approaching her. "But silence often speaks louder than words. What aren't you telling me?" She looked up, her eyes filled with anguish. Edward wasn't the man everyone thought he was. He had affairs, yes, but it was more than that. He used people, manipulated them. He enjoyed control. "Did he control you too?" Ames asked gently. Her voice trembled. "Yes. He made me feel small, unworthy. But I stayed because I loved him once, and because I was afraid of what he might do if I left." Lila Moreau's polished demeanor was gone when Ames confronted her in the office. She was pacing, her fingers nervously twisting a silver bracelet. "Lila," Ames began, his tone firm, "someone on this island knows the truth. Was it you who left the note under my door?" Her eyes widened, but she quickly recovered. "I don't know what you're talking about," she replied, but her voice betrayed her. "Lila," he said sharply, "enough games. Edward had leverage over you, didn't he? What was it?" Her shoulders slumped as she sank into a chair. "He knew about my past," she confessed. "A mistake I made before I started working here. He threatened to ruin me if I ever crossed him." "So, you had a reason to want him dead," Ames pressed. Lila looked up, her eyes flashing with anger. "Do you think I'm the only one? This place is full of people Edward wronged." That evening, Ames walked along the beach, the setting sun casting long shadows across the sand. His thoughts were interrupted by Victor Lang, who appeared out of nowhere, his expression grim. "Detective," Victor said, his voice low, "there's something you need to see." Victor led Ames to a small boathouse at the edge of the island. Inside, they found a locked drawer. Victor handed him the key. "I found this in Edward's private study," Victor explained. Ames opened the drawer to find a stack of documents and photographs. They detailed Edward's dealings, secret partnerships, bribes, and blackmail schemes. "This is a list of people who had every reason to hate him," Victor said grimly. Ames studied the documents, his mind racing. "This changes everything," he muttered. Just as Ames began connecting the dots, a blood-curdling scream echoed from the main villa. He sprinted to the scene, finding Elena Navarro standing in the hallway, her face pale. "It's Isabel," she cried, pointing to the master suite. Inside, Isabel lay unconscious on the floor, an empty bottle of pills beside her. Ames checked her pulse, it was faint but steady. "She tried to end it," Elena whispered, her voice shaking. "Do you think she's guilty?" Ames stood, his jaw tightening. "Guilty or not, someone pushed her to this. And I'm going to find out who." As the night descended, Ames sat by Isabel's bedside, his resolve hardening. The island's beauty felt suffocating now, a facade masking its treachery. He whispered to himself, "No one escapes the truth. Not here, not in paradise." The air on Azure Cove carried a heaviness, as if the island knew the darkness that lingered in its corners. The attempt on Isabel Carlyle's life left the resort on edge, the guests murmuring in tight circles, their whispers mingling with the rustling palms. Detective Julian Ames knew he was running out of time. Whoever was behind Edward's death was getting desperate. Isabel's eyes fluttered open in her villa's master suite, her breathing shallow but steady. Ames sat nearby, his presence a silent reassurance. When she finally spoke, her voice was faint but resolute. "I didn't try to kill myself, Detective," Isabel whispered, her gaze locking onto Ames. "Someone wants me out of the way." The storm's aftermath left Azure Cove tense and restless. Isabel Carlyle, recovering from an apparent poisoning, revealed to Detective Julian Ames that she had discovered a hidden file in Edward's safe. The file detailed Edward's secret partnerships and offshore dealings, but it had mysteriously vanished before she could share it. Isabel insisted she hadn't tried to harm herself, claiming someone was trying to silence her. Ames confronted Daniel Grayson, Edward's former business partner, who admitted to financial disputes with Edward but denied involvement in Isabel's poisoning. Daniel suggested someone with the most to lose from Edward's shady dealings might be behind the murder and the attempt on Isabel's life. Lila Moreau confessed to Ames that she managed Edward's illegal dealings and believed his death was part of a larger scheme to bury those secrets. Her fear of becoming the next target made her finally open up about Edward's offshore accounts and bribery networks. While investigating the boathouse again, Ames discovered Edward's hidden journal. The journal contained cryptic notes about Edward's fears and suspicions, including an entry hinting at betrayal by someone close. However, the name of the potential suspect was torn out. Ames turned to Elena Navarro, who revealed that Edward had confided in her about feeling betrayed but never named the person he suspected. She warned Ames about the danger of trusting anyone on the island. Lila Moreau was pacing by the pool when Ames approached her, her usual poise replaced with raw nerves. "Detective," she blurted out before he could speak, "you don't understand how dangerous this is. Edward's secrets, they're bigger than you realize." Ames studied her carefully. "You've known more than you've let on from the start, Lila. Tell me the truth, what were you and Edward hiding?" Lila looked around nervously, lowering her voice. "There were investments, deals that weren't exactly legal. Offshore accounts, bribes to government officials. He made me manage the paperwork. And now someone's trying to cover it up," Ames concluded. Lila nodded, tears welling in her eyes. "I didn't kill him, Detective. But whoever did, they'll stop at nothing to keep their secrets buried." Meanwhile, Lila's growing paranoia led her to Ames in a panicked state. She confessed to receiving anonymous threats since Edward's murder, warning her to stay silent. "They know I'm talking to you, Detective," she whispered. "If I don't leave this island soon, I'll be next." Ames' investigation took a dramatic turn when he discovered surveillance footage from the resort. The video showed Edward meeting with a shadowy figure near the boathouse the night before his death. Though the footage was grainy, the person's distinctive silver watch gleamed under the moonlight, matching Victor's description of the mysterious visitor. Him staring at the screen, his instincts telling him the figure held the key to the case. Yet, the figure's identity remained elusive, leaving Ames to wonder, was this person an outsider, or someone already among them, hiding in plain sight? As the waves crashed against the shore, the island's whispers seemed louder than ever, urging Ames to uncover the truth before the darkness consumed them all. Ames enlisted the help of the resort's IT specialist to enhance the grainy footage of the shadowy figure meeting Edward before his death. Though the figure's face remained obscured, Ames noticed a distinct bracelet on their wrist, a design he had seen before but couldn't yet place. Victor Lang became a central focus as Ames confronted him about his knowledge of the mysterious visitor. Victor admitted he had overheard Edward arguing with the person but refused to divulge more. Ames pressed harder, and Victor finally confessed, "I didn't speak up because I know who it is. But if I tell you, I'll be signing my own death warrant." Lila Moreau's paranoia boiled over, prompting her to confront Elena Navarro during a heated argument by the pool. Lila accused Elena of orchestrating Edward's murder to cover up her own secrets. Elena snapped, revealing she had known about Edward's financial schemes but denied any involvement in his death. "If I wanted Edward gone," Elena hissed, "I wouldn't have been so sloppy." During a routine walkthrough of the resort's dining area, Ames noticed Daniel Grayson wearing a silver watch identical to the one seen in the surveillance footage. When questioned, Daniel claimed he had lost the watch weeks ago, sparking further suspicion. Later that evening, Isabel Carlyle approached Ames in secret. Her composure was shattered as she revealed a shocking detail: she had seen Victor Lang with Edward's journal before it disappeared. "Victor is hiding something," she insisted. "And I think it's the key to everything." Determined to verify Isabel's claim, Ames searched Victor's quarters while the chef was occupied. Hidden in a false bottom of a drawer, he found Edward's missing journal page. The torn fragment listed several names, including Daniel Grayson, Lila Moreau, and a final name that sent a chill through Ames, Victor Lang. As Ames pieced together the significance of the names, Victor appeared in the doorway, his face a mask of fury. "You should have left it alone, detective," Victor growled. The mystery on Azure Cove reached its explosive conclusion as Detective Julian Ames faced the ultimate confrontation. The island's secrets unraveled, revealing the mastermind behind Edward Carlyle's death and the shadowy web of betrayal and greed. Victor Lang confronting Ames in his quarters, armed and desperate. "You don't understand what Edward did to us," Victor snarled, his hands trembling. Ames calmly defused the situation, using Victor's guilt to break through his defenses. Victor confessed, Edward had blackmailed him and others with their darkest secrets, using them as pawns in his financial schemes. "But I didn't kill him," Victor insisted. "I wanted to, but someone got there first." Before Ames could press further, Victor fled, leaving the detective with a crucial lead. The mastermind was among the remaining guests and had orchestrated everything to frame Victor. Ames gathered the remaining suspects in the villa's grand lounge, his demeanor sharp and commanding. He presented the torn journal page, the surveillance footage, and the sequence of events leading to Edward's death. "Every piece of evidence points to someone who knew Edward better than anyone," Ames declared. His gaze turned to Isabel Carlyle. Isabel's shocked expression faltered under Ames' relentless scrutiny. "You knew about Edward's schemes," he continued. "You suffered under his control for years, but when you learned he planned to cut you out of his will and expose your own secrets, you took matters into your own hands." Isabel broke into tears, her facade shattering. "I didn't mean for it to go so far," she confessed. "I only wanted to scare him, to make him listen. But when he threatened me, I panicked, and it was over." Just as Isabel's confession seemed to close the case, Lila Moreau stood and delivered a chilling statement. Isabel didn't act alone. Lila revealed that she had helped Isabel cover up the crime, knowing Edward's death would protect her own secrets. "I was trapped too," Lila admitted. "But Isabel had the courage to act, and I couldn't let her take the fall alone." Justice. With both women in custody, Ames reflected on the cost of uncovering the truth. Victor Lang was cleared of murder charges but faced investigation for his role in Edward's financial crimes. Daniel Grayson, though complicit in Edward's schemes, was also revealed to be a victim of Edward's manipulation and agreed to testify against the guilty parties. Elena Navarro, whose loyalty to Edward had protected her from suspicion, left the island quietly, her true motives never fully revealed. The tide turns. As the sun set on Azure Cove, Ames stood on the beach, watching the waves wash away footprints in the sand. The island's beauty had been a cruel illusion, hiding the greed and betrayal beneath its surface. In a quiet moment, Ames murmured to himself, "Paradise is never what it seems." But the truth always finds a way to rise. The detective left Azure Cove, the weight of its secrets still lingering, but justice finally served.